If you've got a bunch of processes in your business and you're trying to automate those processes, I'm going to show you a really simple trick that you can do before you add automation so that your processes are easier to automate and show on dashboards, but also easier for your team to train on and easier to maintain documentation on as your process changes over time. So this is ridiculously simple. You're going to love this when you see it and like slap yourself thinking, I don't know why you didn't think of this before, but this is super, super, super simple. This all comes from my time spent doing engineering and automation for multi-billion-dollar manufacturing companies all around Europe and North America, and a little bit in China as well. And all of these concepts, like basically I'm going to give you all these things that you can steal and apply to your business as well, so you can operate like the big boys. This does actually work though. So yes, I spent a bunch of time on like these massive enterprise companies, but now I'm a co-founder of a company called Ops Kings, and we've applied the same methodology, or like all these methodologies, to regular SMB businesses. So like 50-person companies, 100-person companies, even some like 10 or 20-person companies. So this does really work, and our clients, some of them have like 5 or 10x in the time that we've been working with them. So feel free to steal all these. Hopefully you like this series as well. And I'm giving all this away, or giving all these things away, to get more clients. Yeah, I want people who have a lot of money and not a lot of time to hire us. But also we get a lot of really great team members as well from sharing content, and really cool opportunities as well. So hopefully you enjoy. Now let's get into the recommendation. 2 like ridiculously simple things. Number 1 is I want you to define a step number for the steps in your process, not just the step name. Okay, so the number is going to be the unique identifier that never changes, so that you can change the name and make the name more descriptive. Okay, that's the documentation, things like that. And the second recommendation is not to use sequential numbers. So rather than saying step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you want to use step 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Now let's get into like some really cool benefits of why you might do this. Number 1 is, why would you want to use step numbers? Well, this allows you to do code and automation much easier. So if you have a step name in the process, you have to make sure that that name never changes, which means that you can't make the process more descriptive and more helpful for your team, because you have to maintain the name. And if you have a lot of steps in the process, your names are going to get confusing to remember for your team. So just by having the number makes your process, number 1, easier to automate, because you can extract the number. You can say, like, if the step is between this range and this range, show it to the designer, and if it's between here and here, it's the client, and if it's between here and here, it's strategy, whatever. Okay. The second thing is, your team is not going to remember the names for steps once the number of steps get super long, right? You want the number of steps to be long so that you don't have to ask your team like where things are at. Oh, this is in design. Have you done the meeting yet, or have you not done the meeting yet? So you want the step numbers, or each individual step, to represent where a deliverable is at in a sequence. And by having the numbers, it allows you to have more steps and your team doesn't go insane. Okay. The second thing you're going to notice, the third thing you're going to notice, is that your team is going to have this like internal shorthand, and so the communication is faster, right? So they'll say, hey, like, how come this process is in, or how come this project is in 25? Can we clear up 25? Right? For our own business, we have thousands. We do about 2,000 to 3,000 features for clients per year. And our internal QA step is 500. So, our team can say, hey, we've got all these 500s, like let's clear this out this morning, right? And it's a shorthand. Now, everybody knows what 500 means, but we all describe it differently. So the unique identifier for the step is the number, not the name. So that's the other thing. And the other thing too is, if you hate maintaining or like updating documentation, you're going to love this, because by having unique step numbers, it means that your documentation could say, if the deliverable is in step 102, this person's responsible for it. Here's the KPI for it and whatever else. And you don't have to keep on like changing or updating your documentation, because like I guarantee you, if you have descriptive steps, you want to have like a lot of steps and have descriptive steps, but you're going to mess this up, right? You are going to not remember to update one specific document, and so it means your documentation is less useful. It means your training is harder. It means automation is harder. Okay. Now, why would you use groups of 10 or groups of 100 instead of just sequential numbers? Well, what happens if you have a 20-step sequence? and you forget or you want to update your sequence or your process and have another step inserted in the middle, then you have to renumber everything else after that, and you have to go and update all your documentation and whatever else. So it's very disruptive to update the process. I learned this lesson, by the way, in doing big manufacturing systems where like you have 20 people updating code on one system. You can't just renumber things. It just breaks everything. So you want to be able to you want to insert things by grouping it together. You can have major and minor steps as well. So you can say like 0 to 99 is the strategy steps, and 100 to 199 is the design steps or whatever else. And you can define like metrics at those ranges as well. So it creates a bit of a convention for major and minor milestones. As I said, it allows you to insert steps without breaking logic. And then you can create conventions as well. So we have a client now who does, they do book publishing, and they have like 50 different steps in their process. Well, we can go through and like I can have multiple developers add steps to their process. Or if the client requests a change, we have a convention to follow. And so for you as well, if you define groups of 10, it allows you to have conventions for what the last digit means, or the last 2 digits mean, or the first digit means. So that's that. The question is like, how do you implement this in your business today? Like, what do you start with? We always start with identifying every single step in the process. We try to get as many different steps out of people's heads and define whether these things happen in series or in parallel, right? This helps you define a source of truth later by grouping the steps into entities. So you probably have, if you have a service business, you probably have a client entity, and that one client entity may have multiple deliverables for the one client. So you have one client that has multiple websites. Each website could have multiple landing pages for the one website. Each landing page might have a campaign attached to the landing page, right? Or a product being promoted by the campaign for the landing page, for instance. So you want to group things together, and every entity then has a sequence of events or process, properties, and relationships between entities as well. And that creates your source of truth, right? So what this means is you don't have to ask your team like, hey, where is this? Because you have this client is in this step of the onboarding process. This landing page is in the design step, is in step 57, for example, okay? And then, as you can imagine, those of you who are smart probably realize that this creates a bit of like a digital manufacturing process for your business, where you have these entities moving through a sequence rather than a scattering of like tasks everywhere, and which then allows you to measure how long is a thing taking on average. And then you can take a step back and say, I want to automate this step, or I want to train more people to do this step better if it's a manual step, or I want to make a client dashboard so the client can do this for me, things like that. So those are the 3 steps for how you'd implement this step number process in your business. I hope you enjoyed that. If you want to have this done for your own business, there's a link in the description. You can book a call with me directly and talk about this. I hope you enjoyed this video. That's it. Peace out.